Let's talk about the Data Audit node, and specifically we're going to talk about the Audit tab of the Data Audit node. The Data Audit node is located in the Output palette. This node provides a first look at the data, including summary statistics and graphs, as well as information on outliers, missing data, and extreme scores. As an example, here we have the result of the Data Audit node, and we're looking at the Audit tab. And we can see each one of the different fields. We can see a graph of that field as well. We can see its level of measurement, and then we can see a variety of summary statistics so that we can start to get familiar with our data. So let's go through an example of how to use the Data Audit node. I'm going to go down to the Output palette, and I'm going to connect my source node to the Data Audit node. Now, I typically like to use the Data Audit node once I've brought in my data, and one of the first things I like to do is use the Data Audit node to get a sense of what my data looks like, to see what the distributions look like, to see what missing values look like, etc. So I'm just going to edit the Data Audit node, but notice that the Data Audit node automatically changes its name to the number of fields that it's going to analyze. So I'll edit that Data Audit node. And the first thing we have to specify is what fields we want to use. The default is that we're going to use all of our fields that do not have the field type typeless. We could also customize which fields we want to use. So we can click on Use Custom Fields and then specify what fields we want to use. In terms of what kind of information we're going to get a graph for each one of our fields. We're going to get some basic statistics as well. We could also ask for some advanced statistics. We could ask for those here, or we could ask for those later on if we want to also. In terms of advanced statistics, we are talking about things like the range, for example. We're talking about kurtosis, things like that. You can also ask to calculate the median and the mode. Notice that these options are not calculated initially because they do slow down performance. But if you want to ask for them, you certainly can. Now, we're going to talk about the Quality tab in the next video, so we'll talk about that then. At this point, we're just going to click on Run. So this is what your Data Audit node is going to typically look like. You're going to have each one of your fields over on the left-hand side, followed by a sample graph that's showing you the distribution of that field. You're then going to get the level of measurement for the field, and if you happen to have a categorical field, what you're going to get is the number of unique values associated with that field and also the number of valid cases associated with that field as well. If you happen to have a continuous field, then what you're going to get is you're going to get the minimum value, so the lowest value that you have for that particular field, the maximum value, the highest value, the mean, which is your mathematical average. You also are going to get the standard deviation, which is going to be the amount of average variation that you have in your distribution. You're also going to get skewness, and skewness is going to be a measure of asymmetry that you have in your distribution, where a value of 0 means that you have a fairly equally distributed distribution, a fairly normal distribution. If you happen to have higher values, values of 2 for example, we can see this value of 2 right here, you can see that we happen to have a distribution that is highly skewed. You don't have unique values for continuous fields, but you do have the number of valid values as well. Now, there are several things that we can do within the Data Audit node. So this gives us, first of all, important information. So we want to determine, for example, we want to make sure we have the correct number of categories for a categorical variable. For example, we have the field domain. We happen to have 17 categories for that field. So a good question to ask yourself is, well, how many categories should I have had? Now, typically you're going to have the correct number of categories. Sometimes you'll find that you'll have less categories than you were expecting, and it might be that a particular outcome was never selected. Or you might have more categories than you were expecting, and it might be that you have some missing data and it's been classified as another category. So it's always important to take a look at the number of unique values that you have for each one of your different categorical variables. Make sure that you have the values that you were expecting. Now, if you do want to check out what values you have, you can certainly just click on any one of those cells that gives you the unique values. If you double click on it, you can see, for example, all of the different values that are associated with this domain variable. And so, I can see, for example, if there is a value that shouldn't have been here, I can go ahead and fix that, or maybe there should have been additional values, and so maybe the data was misread and things like that. I'll close out of this window. Now, another thing that you can do as well is you want to take a look at the distributions of these different variables. So for example, if we happen to have a continuous variable, a variable like age, for example, we see that the age is ranging from 1 to 98, and the average age is about 62 years of age. If we double click on the graph for the variable age, we'll get a much bigger representation from that thumbnail. And here you can see what the graph looks like for this variable. You can see that the distribution is fairly normally distributed. It's not really too bad. So you can see why that student statistic was a value of 0. Notice that we do have some values over here close to a value of 0. Those are the values of 1, and they do range all the way to a value of about 98 or so. Now also notice that because the way the data was set up, we did happen to have a target variable, a variable that we're predicting. And so that target variable, which is called target B in this case, is overlaid on the distribution for age. So we can see what the distribution looks like for those people that have a value of 0 on target B, and also for those people that have a value of 1 on target B in relation to the variable age. So this way you can start to get a general sense of not only what the distribution looks like, but if a variable tends to be associated with a particular outcome as well. We'll close out of this window. And I'm going to open up the data audit node again here. And let's just take a look at the distribution of a categorical field. So if I double click on the field age flag, for example, we see that it happens to have 3 values. I'm going to double click on that thumbnail there. I can see what the distribution looks like. And you can see, for example, that we have a value of E and a value of I. We also have a value that's blank. It doesn't actually have a label. So that's actually missing data, but we haven't actually let modeler know that that is missing information, but yet that's something that the data audit node has found for us. So that tends to be pretty useful also. We'll close out of this window. Now let me point out a couple of other things as well. So let's say, for example, we wanted to show additional summary statistics. Well, we didn't ask for the extra summary statistics, but we can ask for them now if we wanted to. So one thing that we can do is we can go up to the Edit menu, and we can click on either Display Statistics here, or we can click on Display Statistics in this area as well. You can click on either one. That shows you which summary statistics are currently displayed and which ones are also available. So if you wanted one of these additional summary statistics, you certainly can choose it. For example, let's say I wanted to choose kurtosis, for example, and let's say I wanted the range as well. And I'll just click OK. And that allows me to add in those additional summary statistics. So now I'm displaying the range, and we have kurtosis a little further down the line. So you can certainly add in additional summary statistics that you hadn't requested initially as well. Let me show a couple of other things also. If I click on the variable age, for example, I can go up to the Generate menu. And with the Generate menu now, I can take the variable age, or if I had selected several variables, and I could decide to show the graph if I wanted to. If I also wanted to create a new field using a derive node, a binning node, or a reclassify node, I certainly can do that as well. So if I see something interesting and I want to create that new field, this kind of gives me a head start. Another thing I want you to notice is that you can use the missing values filter node. So if you've selected several fields, let's say that there's fields that have a lot of missing information, or maybe there's only one value for that particular field, you might want to select those fields. You can click on missing values filter node, and that allows you to filter out those fields downstream. So let me just show a little additional functionality that you still have within the data audit node. For example, let's say I wanted to sort my data. Let's say I wanted to sort it on the number of valid cases. I can go up to the valid column and I can just click on it, and now I've sorted my data. In this case, it's in descending order. So I have the lowest values at the bottom and the highest values at the top. I can certainly sort it in the other direction if I'd like as well. So one of the nice things about this particular option is that, for example, if I wanted to select several of these variables, let's say all of the cases that have less than 1,000 cases, for example, and I wanted to filter those out, I could. I can go up to the Generate menu now, and I can click on Missing Values Filter Node, and I can just select that. And I'm just going to move this window over for a second here. I'm going to go back over to my stream. I'm going to just connect my source node to the filter node that I've just created. I'm going to edit the filter node, and you can see that we filtered out 4 fields. In this case, those are the 4 fields that had very little data. I'm just going to close out of here again, and I'm just going to open up the data audit node again here and look at the results. So one other thing I wanted to point out, let's say for example you wanted to change the order in which these columns are displayed. You certainly can do that. Let's say for example you really are interested in terms of how many unique values you have and how many valid values. You can take the unique column, for example, and you can bring it over to the measurement level and you can place it there. You can also take the number of valid column and you can bring it over to the unique column as well. So you can certainly select these different columns and arrange them in a different order so that it makes it a little easier to understand what's really going on with the data. So I'm just going to close out of this window. So this is an example of how you can use the data audit node so that you can take that first quick glance at your data and get a chance to take a look at some of the summary statistics, take a look at the distributions of the variable as well to get a better sense of what's going on with the data.